1968 football in the Southeastern Conference produced a potpourri of plays you'll long remember. The conference kingpin Georgia Bulldogs bucked the touchdown tide by leading the nation in defense against scoring. This 99th chapter of college football began in the wee hours of autumn as Georgia met defending champion Tennessee, a confrontation that produced a 17-17 tie. But it was a portent of thrills to come, so let's take it from late September. Kentucky meets Mississippi in Jackson, and the Wildcats claw early as quarterback Stan Forston sails one to Joe Jacobs. Joe is hobbled at the Mississippi 8 on a saving dive by Robert Bailey. 2 plays and 1 penalty later, Dickie Lyons penetrates low to break the scoring ice. It's a battle of sophomore signal colors, and here's the Rebels' prize rookie Archie Manning with a 28-yard beauty to Hank Show's to the Kentucky 10. Following a Perry King field goal for Ole Miss, all-conference halfback and top scorer Dickie Lyons of Kentucky shows his running style after fielding a kick from the league's leading punter, Julian Fagan. A convoy of buddies passed midfield, then an extemporaneous performance to the Ole Miss 6-yard stripe. From the 1, Dick Beard climbs over tackle for a 14-3 Kentucky lead. So it's back to the drawing boards for Mississippi. Steve Hyman caps an 84-yard drive with a 4-yard burst off tackle. A gremlin is loose as David Hunter performs pigskin pilferage for Kentucky, his second of the game. Dave counterpunches up the obstacle course, 47 yards to the Ole Miss 48-yard stripe. In the final quarter, Manning lectures on the quarterback option. From the Kentucky 20, a fake, a keep, and untouched to the pay station. The scamper gives Mississippi a 17-14 lead. Ole Miss turned a trio of Kentucky misfires into touchdowns. Robert Bailey swiped this flat pass and trotted 14 paces to make the final Mississippi 30, Kentucky 14. Mississippi State challenges Florida in Gainesville. Jackie Ekdahl hands to fullback Larry Smith. Smith sends it airmail back to Ekdahl, who punches to the maroon 6-yard stripe. Now it's Big Larry's cue, and the 6'4", 221-pound All-American hammers it in for a 7-0 Florida lead. Mississippi State's Tommy Farr led the SEC in passing, but the Mighty Might also showed a flair for the run. Don Dudley finds a chink in the Florida armor and pounds the pavement for 21. Farr goes on the prowl again to the near side, and he's in whisker distance of the goal. Tommy's 1968 total offense surpassed 2,000 yards. Buddy Newsome gets the call from 12 inches away, and he slides in with the TD that ties. It's 7-all. Moments later, the Gators put together quite a package. First, Ekdahl southpaws to Jim Yarborough for 26. Then Larry Smith takes it on a pitch out around the corner for 22. Larry was the league's busiest ball carrier in the 68 campaign. Next play, Guy Dennis and mates clear the path as Tom Christian begins a mighty rumble. But there's a fumble, and Jim Yarborough claims squatter rights for a Florida 6-pointer. Later in the first, the Gators' Christian finds a gash and beats a path to the sideline. Tom shifts to low gear and powers across, a 51-yard dandy, and Florida leads 21-7. The Maroons cranked up in the second stanza on a halfback option pass. David Smith pegs to Sammy Milner, and it clicks for 27. Farr fires to Don Dudley, who fights to the Florida 10. David Smith's number is dialed, and he rides the tide to put the Bulldogs in contention. They trail at this juncture by 7. Tom Christian gained 151 yards for Florida, with this ramble accounting for 58. Tom just won't be denied as he backs in for the score that makes the final Florida 31, Mississippi State 14. Next on the firing line, Mississippi and Georgia in a mid-October outing in Athens. Ole Miss tumbles one to Georgia's Jake Scott. Later in the initial period, Rebel Steve Hyman takes a pitch out. We'll view the traffic from the rumble seat as Steve maneuvers through the maze for 42 yards. In the second, Manning smokes one to Riley Myers, who trips, then rips for 29 yards. It's Archie on the option to Floyd Franks, and jersey number 26 is safely home. The second half kickoff comes in for splashdown. Bo Bowen lugs it back to the 24. But a turnover soon gives Georgia possession. And Mike Cavan gets a clearing block on this rollout for 10. A 15-yard fine moves the line of scrimmage back to the Rebel 25. Cavan delivers to Brad Johnson on the screen. An enemy ambush waylays Brad after short yardage. It's Bobby Garagust. As the final quarter beckons, Georgia trails by 1. Cavan finds Dennis Hughes on a look-in, and Dennis sheds tacklers to the 17. The Bulldogs are threatening, and again Cavan goes airborne, Charles Whittemore providing the target on a sideline pattern. Speedy Kent Lawrence cuts the corner, and there's jubilation in Georgia as the home team takes a 12-7 lead. An end-zone interception smothered an Ole Miss rebound and set the stage for the game's longest play. It's Cavan to Hughes, 64 yards on the pass and run. And for Georgia, a 20-7 victory over the Rebels of Mississippi. Let's look in as the Tennessee Volunteers play host to Alabama. Benny Dalton of Tennessee returns the opening salvo. The Vols stay in the trenches for 5 plays, then Bubba White hits fullback Richard Pickens on the screen. Pile driving Mr. Pickens, the league's leading ground gainer, gathers a head of steam and picks up cover. He's shackled at the rim of the canyon. Richmond Flowers does a half gainer to send Tennessee into an early lead. The Vols add 3 on this Southeastern Conference record breaker. Up go the arms following Carl Kremser's 54-yard field goal. Alabama negotiates a reprieve. Scott Hunter rides shotgun, 13 yards to Donnie Sutton. Steve Kiner and Mike Jones apply the clamps. Then to Bobby the Hawk Swafford, who's manhandled at the 7 by Jim Weatherford. The Hunter-Sutton combo strikes again. Donnie inhales in the end zone, but the 2-point conversion try fails, and Tennessee wins a 10-9 cliffhanger. Vanderbilt and Florida locked horns in a scoring standoff. Vandy quarterback John Miller spirals one to Dave Strong. After a fumble recovery, Florida's Tom Christian rams the fortified Vanderbilt goal with just 27 seconds remaining in the half. The Commodores attack with this Miller to Strong duet getting prime position. Tailback John Volpet jabs 4 times, and here's number 4, a slant end that knots the score. Florida moved the pig hide on the aerial artistry of Larry Rentz. He slings to Guy McFeeney, whose hike is halted at the Vandy 18. This drive runs aground, checkmated by an interception. Christy Houck makes the leaping grab at the Vanderbilt 4. His mates led the league, by the way, in pass defense. We pick it up in the 4th as the Commodore Steve Smith booms a 50-yard punt to Steve Tannen, who fields it, gives ground, sees daylight, and heads for same. It's suddenly a 5-man race and a 72-yard touchdown dash for Tannen. The Vanderbilt crew had another trick or two as Miller pulls the lanyard. Jim Cunningham flags it at the 2 for a 14-14 tie. October 26, a Georgia-Kentucky scoring bee. Georgian Brad Johnson offers a stiff arm handshake and a stutter step that shows amazing balance. After an exchange, safety man Jake Scott shows his All-American credentials. He spears a Kentucky missile and high steps it to the goal line for the first score of the game. As we join the fracas in the 3rd, Kentucky's signal caller Dave Baer demonstrates the option pattern. A display of finesse that nets 21. But it wasn't until the final quarter that the Wildcats stroked the scoreboard. Baer uncorks a 45-yard bomb. There's Dickie Lyons tucking it in for a bumpy landing. Georgia leads 21-7. This is where Scott drops in for his 2nd steal of the evening and 2nd touchdown romp. Jake's journey includes a Watusi step, then starboard full rudder. The great Scott picked off 10 enemy aerials during the year and also led the conference in punt returns. The Wildcats rebound. and tie a conference record. Bear fades to the brink of disaster, spots Lions in short center, and it's quite a race. The official at the bottom of the screen puts forth a gallant effort to keep pace. Dickey coast in to cap a 92-yard picture play. Georgia added a late score to make the final 35-14 over Kentucky. LSU and Mississippi renew an ancient rivalry in Tiger Stadium. Ole Miss strikes first on this Archie Manning pass to Steve Hindman. Up close, we see Jimmy Wallace holding in the stylish kicking form of Perry King. It provides the Rebels a timid lead. LSU's Freddie Haynes retaliates on a pitch to Tommy Allen, who strains for the outside corridor. The wiggle and squirm gains 27. After a Tiger three-pointer, Manning puts a wobbler in the air. Vernon Studdard bags it at the 40. A bear hug landing in the arms of Barton Fry and James Lambert. Let's peer over the shoulder of the Rebs cornerback for a front porch view of the battle zone. Mike Hillman hands to tailback Glenn Smith, and Glenn churns the turf to the Tiger 45. Later in the second quarter, Hillman rifles long to lonesome Tommy Morrell. Tommy applies the brakes, and Rebel defenders close in for containment. As LSU rides herd on a 10-3 lead, Ole Miss uses a turnover to harvest a tying tally. Glenn Cannon brands it and tight ropes 32 thundering yards to the Tiger 2, from where Manning punched his own ticket on a sweep for the score. Ole Miss holds a fragile 20-17 lead as the Tigers' Hillman pumps one down the pike to Jim West, who does a Tiger bounce and rides out the turbulence for a new set of downs. Kenny Newfield comes down from 11 yards away, and the Louisiana boys help themselves to a 4-point bulge 24-20 as the seesaw battle continues. Only 3.5 minutes of madness to go. Manning on the mound, on target to Leon Phelps as we move in eyeball to eyeball for the chase. Manning works the rollout pass to Hank Shouse. The 6'3" senior smacks his way to the LSU 8. 55 seconds and ticking. Manning eyes left, off the hands of the Tiger, into the clutches of Hindman. A super lunge and the end of a classic. Mississippi wins it 27-24. November 9 in Birmingham, and the Auburn Tigers put a crimp in Tennessee's bid for a title encore. The Vols set up shop as Weich gives to George Silvey. Dave Campbell applies the vice, causing a bug in the rug. The long arm of the law says Auburn has it going that way. After an exchange, Auburn passman Lauren Carter transmits, and Dwight Hurston makes an over-the-shoulder snare. Then the climax play of the drive, a chunk to Checkerboard Flats. Mike Courier has it. The Auburn folks added another score to start the second, so Tennessee faces a retooling task. Bubba deals deep, intended for Flowers. Tiger piracy again as Merrill Shirley is early bird on the scene. Auburn is in business at the Vol 14. Weich and Carter each hit on 14 scoring passes during the year. Watch the Carter hurling method, a perfect lob to Courier, who racked up 3 touchdowns in the game. This is number 2. Pressure mounts on Tennessee as Mr. Weich plays Mr. Cool in a hostile crowd. Here's a bird's eye view of Gary Chris striking the first touchdown blow for the Orange. As the Vols try to close the gap, Bubba seeks Silvey, who's down in end zone camera country. Sliding and gliding along, George plays it by the book, 37 yards with the scoring capsule, and the Auburn lead dwindles to 7. But here's the clincher, as Carter flings. Tim Christian buttons it up at the Vol 10. A 49-yard endeavor that puts it out of reach as Auburn tumbles Tennessee 28-24. Alabama LSU, first series of downs. The Crimson Tide repertoire includes this gem, Scott Hunter to Ed Margin. 57 bruising, cruising yards before he's apprehended at the Tiger 10. LSU real estate is tough to navigate, so Hunter takes the overhead route to Pete Gillaba in the right flat, and Pete paddles ashore. The Tigers turn in this third quarter spurt. Jimmy Gilbert to the launch pad, and it clicks for 13 to Tommy Morrell. The gang's all here for the arrest. Same series, second verse, and look at that gaping hole. Gilbert keeps, and his change of pace carries to the tied 30. Glenn Smith turns mail carrier, toting cross country for 15. Here's an LSU scoring ditty. Gilbert hurls in the nick of time, and Kenny Newfield comes our way, weaving 15 paces to close the book on an 80-yard drive. It's 7-6 LSU. At this stage, Hunter hunts Bobby Swafford, who waltzes to the Tiger 3. Bama added a field goal here, but LSU bites back with an apparent change-of-mind pass play. Gilbert lobs to Bob Hamlet, and Big Bob really turns on the afterburners. This drive came to grief, as did the next Tiger effort early in the fourth. All-American Mike Hall swipes a pass and applies a boulder for a shoulder on his lateral return. Ed Morgan darts over left guard and is finally mauled at the 4. There's a stakeout on infantry, so Hunter goes upstairs to Donnie Sutton as our field camera captures the catch that wraps it up for Alabama, 16-7 over LSU. Auburn plays host to Georgia at Cliff Hare Stadium. Mike Courier bangs into a bevy of Bulldogs at the Georgia 19. After an Auburn field goal, we angle in for a close inspection of a Georgia pass from Cabin to Hughes. Buddy McClinton makes the pinch. Hang on now as Courier fields the kick following a Georgia three-pointer. He survives a double crisis. A virtuoso performance until he's horse-collared by Ken Shaw, who had the angle, a 73-yard return. This second quarter action breaks a 3-3 tie. Cabin to Lawrence, a 22-yard payoff, and Georgia leads 10-3. This is the year of the Bulldog, and Georgia wraps up the Southeastern Conference Championship with a 17-3 triumph. The Thanksgiving season as Kentucky meets Tennessee. The Wildcats' Dick Beard punctures right guard, escapes a lasso for a 28-yard gainer. Dave Bear flings over the herd, and Vic King hawks the hide to keep the threat alive. From the Volunteer 4, 3rd and 4, Bear is in trouble. The ball is airborne, and Paul Martin makes a rocking chair catch. And while he relaxes, his tormentor displays that dejected feeling. Kentucky owns a 7-0 lead. Tennessee soon squares things. Roll out the carpet for the long stride of Lester McLean. This same White-McLean pitch pattern accounted for another Vol TD and a 14-7 halftime lead. Lanny Pierce does some neat stepping for Tennessee, putting his signature on a 39-yard gallop before he's headed off at the pass. After a Tennessee field goal, Kentucky's Dave Bear threads the needle on a pass to Phil Thompson. But here comes a pickpocket. The Vols' Jack Reynolds steps in front and shows open field antics on a 21-yard return. This is how it looks from the turf as Weich finds Ken DeLong in the end zone. Ken runs into a clothesline just as he has the urge to celebrate. It's Tennessee 24-7 over Kentucky. The last week of the season produced a ton of thrills, including this old rib rattler in Alabama. Auburn's Lauren Carter swings one to his right, and Dwight Hurston shows how to play the game with gusto. 3 broken tackles and a net of 13. On Alabama's second scrimmage play, we see one of the premier runs of the year. Ed Morgan finds a narrow passage, a feint at the flank, the London Bridge game, and Ed freight trains home 35 yards to a happy reunion. Alabama leads 7-0. Later, with Bama still on the move, Pete Moore plays outfielder, and here's a tummy massage for Don Webb. Red dogging Mike Colon grabs at Hunter, and Mr. Webb is in the thick of things again to heist one for Auburn. there's a swap shop medley of miscues as Tommy Wigan returns the favor. The field camera shows Tommy inside a tiger trap. Next on the docket, a Scott Hunter bullet to Hunter Husband, who's caught in a pincer operation at the Auburn 1. Ed Morgan on the dive, and a rough but happy landing. The Tide lead grows to 14-3 at intermission. From down in the chute, let's watch Lauren Carter dissect the defense on a pass to Tim Christian, a collaboration that gains 20. Tim caught 47 passes during the season, including 7 for touchdowns. Auburn is playing catch-up. Carter on the draw to a head-on collision with Wigan, who fathomed the play after a pickup of 14. Mr. Carter heaves to Courier, who finds refuge after a 70-yard home run romp. However, Alabama wins it 24-16 to finish in a 3-way tie for third with Auburn and LSU. Dudley Field, Nashville. Tennessee and Vanderbilt play one close to the vest. Vandy heads north as John Miller passes 8 yards to Carl Weiss. An interception turns it around, and Richmond Flowers fractures the middle and sprints 11 yards for a volunteer lead. The Commodores uncover touchdown gold in a third quarter foray. Miller throws, and Chuck Boyd catches in a crowd near the flag. Alan Spear finds daylight in Tennessee terrain, and we have a 7-7 ball game. That brings out Tennessee's heavy artillery. Weich delivers to DeLong for 11. Charlie Rosenfelder opens the gate as Richard Pickens bolts for 5. The volunteer script calls for Carl Kremser. His boot is on target for a 10-7 lead that withstood the test of time. Tennessee finishes second in the conference standings. Another intrastate rivalry with nostalgic overtones puts the icing on the 1968 cake. Mississippi and Mississippi State brace for a surefire heartstopper. State's Tommy Farr, following that giddy gallop, delivers to Don Dudley, who packs it to the Ole Miss 15. The Bulldogs call on Bob Culver for a 37-yard field goal. Ball hits goalpost and trickles through by the width of a fickle finger of fate. The lead is short-lived as the Rebels rally. In slow motion, here's the culmination of a Mississippi drive. Steve Heineman, the All-A pre-med major, rides right tackle into Muscle Gulch for a 7-3 Rebel lead. Farr proves to be a bulldog with feline quickness on this 14-yard pilgrimage. Second quarter now, and Tommy calibrates his trusty Long Tom for a bullseye to soft Sammy Milner, who led the conference in receptions with 64. The clarion call for 6 goes to Len Zarink. Len reads it loud and clear and somersaults home for the first state TD against Ole Miss since 1964. As fourth quarter tension mounts, another prime pitch by Farr. Milner says, "You're all mine, baby," and the 49-yarder provides a 17-10 lead for State. That brings us to the twilight zone of the 68 season. Archie Manning rolls left for Mississippi, spots a crevice and zeroes in. Perry King, with ice-water veins, kicks for the tie that binds, 17 all. And that's how this milestone season started back in September, if you recall. From Bayou to Bluegrass, from Starkville to Gainesville, Saturday's heroes really made it a year to savor, as 6 of the 10 great schools of the league answered calls to bowl bids. Georgia, whose defensive tackle Bill Stanfill won the Outland Trophy as the nation's top interior lineman. Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, and Mississippi. See you again next year, the centennial year of collegiate football. We invite you to go to the games with Humble. Happy motoring.